Welcome everyone to the Bridge Cultures from ISIC. My name is Virginia Ruiz, and today in the Bridge Cultures we are going to discuss about Japanese culture. But first we go to our vignette. Good afternoon, good evening. Welcome again to our Bridge Cultures. As I was saying, my name is Virginia Ruiz. I'm a volunteer from ISIC, and today we have a special guest that is specialized about Japanese culture. His name is Marcos Hattori. Marcos, welcome to the Bridge. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you, Virginia. I'm very happy to be here today.
Thank you. I'm going to introduce yourself. Marcos Hattori is an entrepreneur. Is graduating mechanic engineer, Brazilian, but he lives in Paraguay. He was born in São Paulo, volunteer of conscientiology since 2012, instructor of conscientiology, and Penta practitioner and author of articles and verbets or entries of Encyclopedia of Conscientiology. So today he's going to present about the Japanese culture. He's going to explain us why he's going to. I think you are going to guess, but he's going to explain why he chose this thing. We have another colleague with us, is a volunteer of ISIC, Liliana Alexandre, that is going to help us to do the discussion. Welcome, Lily.
Hi, everyone. Good to be here.
Hi, Lily.
Thanks for your presence here today. And I wanted to invite all our participants to discuss, to send any questions that Marco will be pleasant to answer to us. I guess he's going to present the whole presentation, and then we can open for the questions. If we have something related, that a small question you can send, of course, be free to send all the questions, and then at the end we open for the debate. So you can start presenting. Arigato.
いえ、どうもいたしまして。Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you ISIC, SEAEC for this opportunity to talk about Japanese culture. And for me, it's a pleasure. At the same time, it's a big challenge to me to talk about this Japanese culture. I feel a very big responsibility to talk about this, probably related to my sexological history. I don't know, as a hypothesis. And but it's something that I will show one slide that I will talk about a little about this. But I decided to go deep in this topic due to my self-research process, and then and it's the motivation. And as you can see, I have a Japanese face. My parents are from Japan, and I bring a lot of characteristics from this culture, even considering that I was born in Brazil. Okay, so let's start. To talk about Japanese culture, for me, it's as I said, it's a big responsibility, and it's a topic. It's a very long topic. You can approach in many ways. You have a lot of information, and I try to choose some topics more interesting in terms of maybe thinking in consciential paradigm or thinking in and self-research. And then I want to share with you some of these topics. And first of all, we have this picture. This picture, it's from a temple, Buddhist temple in Nara. It's a temple that was built in the year 700s. And just for curiosity, Nara is a city that I remember that Professor Wald said that it's one of the chakras of the world. And it's an image that I took in 2019 and brings me very good feelings regarding this place. So first of all, the principle of disbelief. It's important to comment that they did not believe in what I'm saying here, what I'm presenting here, but do your own research, or have your own experiment, and have mainly your personal experience. Okay. And okay, the idea is to show here some topics. And first of all, I did this presentation thinking, first of all, showing the one way to see culture in general. So there is a cultural iceberg model, and then I will show some facts about Japan, the current Japan, and the history of Japan is huge. It's very, very, very long. So I try to compact, to shrink this 10,000 years of history in a few minutes. So for sure, I will present just the main topics, and I will not be able to show everything. And I will talk a little about my personal experience regarding the Japanese culture, some strong traits of the Japanese culture, weak traits of Japanese culture, some aspects related to this culture that is represent how Japanese think, how Japanese behave, my view of the holodozin of Japan, holokarma of nations, and to finish some challenge for possible intermissivists in Japan or in Japanese culture in general. Okay. So moving on, there is one model defined by this author, Edward Hall, in 1977, that described that what we normally see in a culture are just the visible part, it's just the surface of some culture. And normally, the larger portion of a culture is hidden beneath the surface. So these images represent well how normally we see a culture. And the challenge is to go deep in this culture, to understand the characteristics, the traits, and then use as to your evolution, to your self-research, and also to consciential approach, right? So when we talk about Japanese culture, we have Japanese food, sushi, animes, music, language, dance, festival. But if you go deep, there are a lot of information that it's not that clear, but represents the biggest part of the culture. Communication styles, notions of friendship, courtesy, manners, concept of time, family, approach for religion, marriage, decision-making, attitudes toward senior citizens, children, rules, works, and etc. So it's an interesting model to think in the culture in this perspective. Okay, to share some interesting facts about Japan. First, population. The population of Japan is the 11th in the world, so it's a very big population. And also about population, there is this graph on the right side that shows the yearly population growth rate. So since 2010, the population growth rate it's negative. It means that population is shrinking in Japan, and the average age of the population is the second oldest population in the world. So it's a very old population in terms of age. And the capital of the Japan is Tokyo. The currency is yen. The GDP of Japan is the third in the world, so it's a very strong power in terms of economic. And the area of Japan, it's relatively small if you compare it like Brazil, USA, or some other countries. And not just that, 75% of the area of Japan is made up by mountains. It means that they have only 25% of flat area to agriculture, industry, to cities, and etc. So you have a big population living in a very small area. And not just that, Japan has been the site of some of the 10 worst natural disasters of 21st century. So Japan, it's a place that is very strongly affected by the geography and by the natural disasters. So we have the tsunami, floods, typhoon, earthquakes, cyclones, and also volcanic eruption. So this geographic situation and the disaster it shape how the Japanese behave and think and take decisions. And the government, formally it's a unitary, parliamentary, constitutional monarchy, and the religion is Shinto, and the Buddhism is the main religion there. And the formation, and also related to the government. In Japan, there's an emperor, but nowadays it's a more symbolic emperor. And according to the imperial family, this imperial dynasty established in 660 before Common Era. So we are talking about more than 2,600 years. But scientifically, they talk about the year 600 Common Era. So there's this small, not small, but this difference between the version from imperial family and the version based on documents and scientifically. The economy is based on industry, so we have a lot of electronic products from Japan, vehicles, machines, ships, chemicals, agriculture. We have also agriculture, service and tourism, science and technology. Okay. So moving ahead, thinking about the history and the origin of Japan. In Japan, in Japanese, they don't say Japan, they say Nihon or Nippon. This is how they call the country. And this kanji, this characteristic, that how it's written in Japan, means sun origin. It's located on the very east side of the Asia, and the people from the continent used to see the east and then see the country of Japan. And regarding the origin of the population, the society, there are two versions. One is the mythological origin, and another is the scientific origin of Japan. And this mythological origin, it says that the Japanese societies descend from gods, and the god from the sun god that named Amaterasu. This idea that the all population descend of these gods reinforce the idea that the emperor and also the Japanese people, they are direct, they have direct connection with gods. So reinforce the idea of uniqueness of Japanese people. And important to comment that the idea of God in Japan or in Shintoism is not the same as we have in the Christianity, for instance. It's not, they have a God could be they have the god of the sea, god of the mountain, god of the forest, and it's not this powerful god that how we normally see here in the Christianity. So there are documents from 712 describing this origin of the nation, saying that the origin of Japan started 660 before Common Era, and then all the population, this imperial family descend from the god. And there is the scientific origin. It started the first data of the origin of Japanese society or the inhabitants of Japan start from Jomon era, that is from 14,000 years before Common Era, and this population, this native population was this Ainu population that came from north of Japan, and also migration from what currently is China, Korea, and Vietnam. Okay. Okay. So the history of Japan, it's very long again. So I will try to just show main topics and show this period that is divided the Japanese history. But it's important to talk about this because it's something that really shape how the Japanese culture is now. So again, we have the Jomon period, the first period, and inhabitants of Japanese island were gatherers, fishers, and hunters. So Jomon is the name of Eros pottery. So Jomon is the type of pottery that was found and dated in this period of year. And then after this, there is Yayoi period. It's a period that with migration from the continent, from Korea, this peninsula of Korea. And then in this period started the rice culture. There is history about this Queen Himiko that reigned over Japan, and also this Yamato clan starting to gain power. And the Kofun period, there is this Yamato clan, this as a stronger one, but in this very well known in Japan area, and also it's a period that the ideas of the Confucianism was introduced by China. After this, in 550 to 710, there is the Asuka period. It's a period that started the introduction of Buddhism by Korean reign, indirectly, because it's Buddhism from the origin of Buddhism in India, but it's the Buddhism from China, and later by the Chinese itself. In this period of Asuka, there is a very strong influence of Chinese. The writing of the Japanese have origin in the Chinese writing, the silk painting, astronomy, architecture is very, if we see the architecture from the Japanese, it's more or less similar to the Chinese architecture, medicine, clothes, dancing, music, and etc. So, and then we have Nara, Heian, and Kamakura period from 710 up to 1333. We have a Nara period, and this year of 710 to 794, there are these two documents, Kojiki and Nihonshoki. These two documents are the documents that describe the origin of the descendant of the emperors connected to the Amaterasu, that is the son of God. And these documents describe that the emperors of Japan started from the early 6th century with Emperor Kinmei. But the imperial house recognized 126 monarchy that starting from Emperor Jimmu, that is the 660 before Common Era. And in this period, it's a period with that we have Nara as a capital. Nara is the city from the first picture. And then we have the Heian period, foundation of the feudalism. In this period, it starts the samurai. By the feudalism, the lords or the feudalism or daimyo, how we call in Japanese, they had the necessity of the warriors to protect the area. So then started this to train or to develop the concept of samurai, and the idea is to maintain the power by the feudal lords. We have after this the Kamakura period. Kamakura period, we have this concept of shogunate. Shogunate comes from the word shogun. Shogun, it's could be interpreted as general. So it's the highest hierarchy in an army, and it's right after the emperor. So this shogunate, this power dominated by the shogun, was established in Kamakura city. And this area is interesting that there was 2 attempts of external invasion by Mongolians, one in 1274 and another on 1281. And it's a very famous history. Most of Japanese know about this. And the origin of the word kamikaze started in this period. In this attempt of the invasion by Mongolians, during the disembarkation of the boats, a strong typhoon forces to retreat. So it was a army much stronger, much bigger than the Japanese army, the groups in the period. And this attempt was failed. And the second attempt, again, another typhoon forced them to retreat. So these 2 events reinforced the idea to the Japanese society or Japanese people that they are in some way protected by the gods, and reinforced this idea of uniqueness of Japanese people. And then this is the origin of the term kamikaze. The kamikaze means, kami means God, and kaze means wind, so the divine winds that saved Japan. And in 1333 is the end of Kamakura shogunate. There's a phrase that the shogunate is a samurai government that is entrusted by the emperor. The shogunate authority is based on the existence of the emperor. So it's important to say that even when we have a shogunate with a very strong power, doesn't mean that the emperor was out of the game. He was there, but kind of in just a symbolic way. But at the end, the presence of the emperor and also this idea of the connection of the emperor with the gods was always reinforced the idea of to keep the emperor. Even sometimes it was in the power, or other times it was just a symbolic, like we have now in Japan. Here we have some pictures and paintings of these 2 events of the attempts of invasion by Mongolians. And in the first picture, there are some warriors here they represent the gods of the wind, so kamikaze. So they kind of fighting against the Mongolian boat. Okay. It's not moving. Okay. And after this attempt of invasion, we have this period called Muromachi period from 1333 to 1573. Here in the right side, we have a structure of the social hierarchy of Japan in this period. We have the emperor as the top. Sometimes the emperor was in the side, just as a symbolic power, and but others, the emperor was really putting the power to this structure. But we have the emperor, shogun as a general, a lot of daimyos with clans around the countries, and below the daimyos, the samurai to protect the daimyos, and then the others, ronin, peasant, artisan, and at the end, at the bottom, merchants. So it's a period that at the beginning of this Muromachi period, the emperor regained the power in Kyoto, but right after this Ashikaga shogunate was getting the power again. And it's a period that strong introduction of the Zen Buddhism. It's influenced the Japanese society. And in this period also, we have the first European arriving in Japan. In this case, the Portuguese arrived in Japan, in the south of Japan. So with the Portuguese, there are the influence of the religion, the Christianism. And in 1549, we have the arrival of Francisco Xavier, this missionary that is now considered a saint. And we have end of 1573, we have end of Ashikaga Shogunate. And what's important to mention is this period, it was a period of Japan with a lot of internal conflicts and a lot of groups trying to get the power and a lot of war, internal war in Japan. And we have from 1573 to 1615, Japan reunification. The Japan reunification, it's a period that was, let's say, represented by these three big samurais. First is Oda Nobunaga, the second Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and the third Ieyasu Tokugawa. So all Japanese know about the history of these three. So they are the responsible to really unify the Japanese. But when we talk about reunification, not something very democratic or beautiful as we imagine, but it's by power, getting more and more area of influence, and then creating this unification. So these three phrases represents the personality of these three samurais. So the first we have here, little Kuko, if you won't sing, I will kill you. This is the personality of Oda Nobunaga by brute force. He was doing this process by brute force. And the second, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, little Kuko, if you won't sing, I will make you sing. So it's a more strategic approach to acquire power around Japan. And then we have Ieyasu Tokugawa. So it's say, little Kuko, if you won't sing, I will wait for you. So it's approach more patient, and that. So these three samurais responsible for the reunification of Japan up to 1650. After this unification of Japan, there is this period called Edo or Tokugawa. Tokugawa is the name of the third samurai from the slide before. And this period of Tokugawa, or Edo, it's very famous because it's a period of more than 200 years of isolation of the country. So isolation is foreign country. It's called Sakoku period. It's a period that they started this process because the influence of the European by the Portuguese, by the Christianity was creating a situation, not comfortable situation for the shoguns as also the imperial family. And then they convinced, or they implemented this isolation policy. It's a period of relatively internal peace, political stability, relatively economical growth, and very strict social order. And the name Edo, it's what is now is Tokyo. So the former name of Tokyo was Edo, and now it's the same place as Tokyo. And in this period, we have the first Japanese-Portuguese dictionary related due to the influence of the Christianity by the Portuguese. And this period only ended started to end by 1854 by arrival of Perry Commodore. It's a Commodore from USA. It's a high hierarchy in the US Navy. And there's a painting showing his black ship arriving in Tokyo. And then from that point started the opening again of the country. So what is important to mention here is that imagine a country more than 200 years without any exchange or culture exchange for any country, and we are talking about an island and with a very big population. So the next era, Meiji period, it's a period from that is the opposite from Edo period. It's a period with cultural exchange with the West. They saw that the Japan was late in terms of development, and as Japan had this idea of the uniqueness, idea of strong culture, the importance of the culture, they saw that the European technology was stronger, and then they started this opening, and mainly pushed by the after the restoration of the imperial power, and they started this opposite direction in comparison to the Edo. So it's a period with a lot of transformations or changes. In 1872, there is this compulsory education has been decreed, and this copy the bank system from European countries. There is this extinction of samurai, and they created the Constitution of Empire of Japan. And together with this a lot of change, there was this the Japanese expansionist policy. So the Japanese believed that they needed to go more to acquire more area, more land, or other countries to protect against or European or other nations that was stronger in that period. So there is this Japan-China war. There's a period with beginning of immigration to Brazil. It's a period that they Korea attachment. So, and this period finished with the death of the Meiji Emperor. So at the same time, Japan in this period had this needed to exchange with the West, but they had the fear that the West would influence too much. So it was always something. Let's do what the Western are doing, but let's try to preserve what are our roots. And then there is a short period from Emperor Taisho. It's a period that the declaration of war on Germany, entering into the First World War I. There is one episode of the Great Earthquake. It's a period that the USA closed the entry for Japanese immigrants and beginning of the Japanese immigrant to Brazil. This repeated again. The mass immigration to Brazil. And then we have the death of the Taisho emperor. After this, we have the Showa period. The Showa period is a period with a lot of conflicts, wars. So it's a period with a strong rise of the nationalism of Japan. The idea is to invest a lot to have a strong industry and also a strong army. Remember that I said about the education was implemented in Japan. It was education that was reinforcing the idea of the divinity of the imperial family. So, and also there is internal political and democratic crisis. So we have assassination of politician and minister. The prime minister was assassinated, and also some ministers. There is an incident in Manchuria. So again, it's a period with this policy of expansionism of Japan was very strong. And for instance, in this period, Japan built the ship called Yamato. It's one of the biggest ship ever constructed. So the investment in army and the industry was very strong. And compare also mainly in comparison to the other countries in Asia. So it was something compared to the England in that period or the USA. We have Shanghai and Nanking incidents, so 2 incidents related to these expansionist policies from Japan. And due to this movement of Japan to invade or to amplify the area, Netherlands and USA stopped selling oil and also metals to Japan. And in that period, Japan had the dependency of 80% of USA oil. So this sanction created a very big problem in Japan, and Japan tried to go fast in the expansion to try to find oil from other countries in Asia. So in the picture, in the map here on the right side, first we have the invasion of Manchuria around China, around Korea and China. And in the picture below, we have the Japanese expansion before attack of the Pearl Harbor. So before really going to the war with USA. So it was a big area of influence, considering Taiwan, some area of China, and southwest of Asia as well. And by these sanctions, in 1941, Japan attacked this Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, and then USA, the United States, started this direct conflict with Japan. And also there's Japan attacked Hong Kong, attacked Philippines. There was some US military bases in Philippines. And then again, based on this expansionist project, they have attacked or invaded Malaysia, Singapore, Myanmar, and Indonesia. And there's one episode that Brazil declared the war on Japan. It's not direct conflict, but as official, it was declared the war. And for 1944, defeating the Battle of Iwo Jima by USA. So it's a period with a lot of movement from the USA to avoid that Japan expanded the area from the southwest of Asia. And then with the Second World War, for 1944, the first incursion of kamikaze aviators, that they are these young aviators with a lot of bombs in the airplane, this suicide attack. And then 1944, the USA sent the atomic bombs to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And after some days, there is the surrender of Japan. So it's also important to mention that up to the end of the war, Japan, the belief of the Japanese people was that Japanese was invincible, was immune, stronger than any other country in the world. So this view, and also enforced by the idea of uniqueness, made very difficult to Japan surrender to the USA. And this we have some pictures here that the moment of the surrender of Japan. We have the General Macarthur, it's very famous in Japan. And after the surrender, there's this period of occupation by USA, by the General Douglas MacArthur. It was about 7 years. And after this, the power again in the democratic, or the power was again with the Japanese people. And 1946, Emperor renounced the divine condition, and we have the economical miracle starting from 1950 to 1973. So in this graph just show the period of war, but after the war, the increasing of the GDP of the rate GDP of the country was huge, around 10% a year, up to achieve the levels of Britain or United States. Okay. So this was a short view of the history of Japan. Again, it's very long. There are a lot of points, a lot of controversy as well. And the Japanese, I know that Japanese education shows something that it's a lot of times is not aligned to the Western. This is based on my experience and talking to Japanese people educated in Japan, and mainly the older Japanese still defend a lot. I'm not saying what is correct or wrong, but just to say that there are still different versions of what really happened during the war. Okay. Okay. My personal experience in Japanese code. Everything's okay up to here?
Yes, I think so. It was very interesting. Maybe there's a question. There's a lot of friends here, some people, Malu, Andre is here, Adriana Kawati, Mariana Nieto,
Great.
Marcelo, André, Vilma. Tem muitas pessoas aqui. We have a lot of people here, and we have a question from Andre.
Yes.
Maybe you can
Yes.
answer. Do you know why the Japanese usually use the philosophy of Buddha as a path to self-perfection?
To self-perfection. Well, a difficult question, Andre. Why Japanese normally use the idea of perfection? I don't know how to answer this, but it's something that it's strong in Japanese culture. The idea of perfection is, I will show some aspect of the culture that reinforce this or that represent this. But one strong trait of the Japanese is the determination. And they are very determined to solve or to do what they need to do. But thinking in the origin of this, I think that it's just my opinion. I'm not sure if I'm correct, but my opinion is that related to the Japanese warrior, mainly samurai, that was influenced by the Buddhism. In some way, the Buddhism, the Zen Buddhism affected the samurai, and this behavior of the samurai affected how the Japanese culture think. So, but I don't know exactly why. More or less connected to I believe that it's connected to the samurai, because the samurai, there is the samurai from very low level, but there is samurai from very high honor and loyalty, blah, blah, blah. And this level of samurai with high loyalty, determination, rigidity, this is well viewed in Japan. And this image maybe reinforced this idea of perfection, determination, to go up to find what is perfect and so on.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So you can continue your presentation, okay? We have...
Okay. About my... Virginia, regarding the time, if I'm
you have...
taking too long, just tell me.
Okay, you have 45 minutes.
Okay.
Well, 15 minutes to finish. Okay, if you want 30 minutes to present, but...
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay, regarding my personal experience in Japanese culture, so again, I was born and raised in Brazil. I'm a Nisei, that is the second generation of immigrants. My parents, they came from Japan in 1975. They married there, and then so I was raised in this Japanese culture, talking in Japanese with my parents. And the friends of my parents, most of them were Japanese. But at the same time, I have this identity of Brazilian and Japanese. I remember that when I was young, I had this identity of Japanese. Oh, I'm Japanese. Everyone in school, family, or friends saying that I'm Japanese. But I noticed that I was different from Japanese from Japan, educated in Japan. So in terms of identity, I have this more or less two way of thinking. That I think it's good to study a culture, to have a different reference. Like for instance, I have some reference from Japan at home, but at the same time I have the reference of Brazil, and then by studying the Japanese culture, I can do the comparison. And I have this, just to comment that regarding this Japanese, Brazilian Japanese, there is one topic that is very commented on this Japanese society in Brazil, that is the identity crisis. Like here, I'm Japanese, but when I go to Japan, I'm not a Japanese there, I'm a Brazilian. And so here I'm Japanese, there I'm Brazilian, so created this, and for some people it's created this crisis of what exactly the nationality of the people. And there is this, I have this agreement and disagreement phenomenon with Japan. There's something that I really appreciate, the respect, and I think it helped me a lot in terms of living here, open doors to me, like to have more opportunity. I feel that having the Japanese genetic and also traits help me to in terms of opportunity, to professional opportunity. This is my experience. But at the same time, there are a lot of things that I disagree. There were expressions from my brother that he sometimes he sees something and he said, "This is so Japanese that make me disgusting." So sometimes I have this situation that, oh, this is very Japanese, but it's too much for me, like this. And I started this research due to necessity to go deep in my self-research. And sometimes I feel as an outsider studying, outsider here in Brazil, but outsider when I study about Japan, ask questions about Japan to Japanese from Japan, or when I was in Japan as well. So I don't think it's bad, but it's how I see and I approach this culture. But at the same time, by studying the Japanese culture, I know that there was a lot of things that it's connected to me and how I behave, a lot of traits. That's what I'm connected to this culture. Okay. So talking about the Japanese culture strong traits. So one is respect, politeness in manner. I think due to this trait, I'm not saying that all Japanese have this trait, but it's something that it's visible in terms of Japanese society. Like there's these episodes, I don't know if everyone remember, in the Olympic Games, I think it was World Cup in Brazil, that the Japanese tourist was collecting garbage in the stadium, this kind of thing. So it's a way to, I know that they don't do this thinking to just to show, to take picture. No, it's something to respect the country, that it's the hospitality of the country that they are visiting. It's a way to show politeness and manner, and also gratitude. In the word arigato, it's very well used and very well applied in Japanese conversation. Sometimes too much. Discipline is something they have this strong trait, and also it's almost a value in the Japanese society. The importance of the loyalty, right? This is very strong. The detail we can see more clearly in products from Japan. As I am engineering, I work at development, product development, and I can see clearly how the Japanese products focus on all detail as much as possible. So not on the product itself, the package, how they will send the color, the combination, the manual, everything they try to think on this. And here related to the question from Andrea is they have the determination. And there is this image of Japanese people, at least in South America, that the Japanese people they are intelligent, they're smart. But in my opinion, it's not true. It's a myth. But what they have is determination, right? I remember, for instance, at the university that there was some Japanese, but the smartest guy was not Japanese, was other cultures. But there are a lot of Japanese because they study a lot and they had this determination, discipline to get in the university and also have good grades. Okay. So Japanese culture weak traits. So regarding weak traits, the first one is the bellicose. Nowadays, we see Japan as a peaceful place, peaceful country. But if we see the whole history of Japan, they have a lot of conflicts, war, and it's very bellicose. It's this hungry of power, of acquiring other or to attack other countries. And nowadays, what we can see clearly is this trait is on if you see Japanese anime or manga, a lot of them are very bellicose. And the martial arts as well. In Japan, you have karate, judo, kendo, ninjutsu, sumo, a lot of martial arts that it's a tip of this trait. Another thing is the pride. Pride is something very, very strong. It was very clear on this during the Second World War. And also, it's almost a value in the Japanese society. Another trait is the inner directed. So this is connected to the next one, the repression. The Japanese in general, they are very inner directed, or they are more shy, or they try to not express Latin culture, for instance. They considering that it's more important to say less, but say correctly instead of say a lot, but not so clear or correctly. Repression is something strong in Japanese culture. I will show some issues regarding Japanese culture about the bullying, hierarchy, or sexism. This reinforces the idea, this concept of inner directed. In terms of communication, Japanese tend to be indirect or ambiguous. They are not straight, direct. It's difficult to Japanese say no. They say different ways, but it's not that clear. So there are a lot of information that are implicit and not directly. Sexism is something strong in Japan, the hierarchy, the rigidity, and the traditionalism. And it's interesting about traditionalism that if you go to Japan, we will see very clearly how some things are very futuristically developed, but in the same time, you go to a city that is very, very traditional. The way that the people do the city, how they behave, how the tradition that they maintain it's very rigid. They keep the tradition. Okay? They have this pride of the culture of Japanese culture and history. So I see this a weak trait because a lot of tradition they are not logic. They not something that they are something that they just repeat as a tradition. Okay. So moving on. Holodozin of Japan. So again, for me it was difficult to create this list of holodozin. Maybe some people will have a different view of this, but what I see in my experiences by going Japan and by Japanese contact with a lot of Japanese people and also my education is the idea of tradition. What is tradition? Is tradition. It's important to keep the tradition in the family, in the company, in the society, in the way you behave. So this holodozin of tradition is very strong. And another holodozin is about work. The work culture in Japan is very, very strong. And mainly thinking the last, let's say, 100, 150 years. And in this image, and the third holodozin that I put is the rules and the strictness. So there are a lot of rules. They're very strict. So in this picture, it's a picture that I took on 2019. It's a rush time in this Shinagawa station. And there was a lot of people, but what is interesting is that when you see this picture, you imagine some place, very loud place, a lot of people talking, blah, 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 and a very noisy place, right? But in reality, it was it's a very quiet place, a few people talking, and what you can hear is the steps of the people. A lot of steps, and it's the movement, the order of the people, the direction from back to front here. In the center area, you have most of the people move in the same direction, and the borders move into the opposite direction. And it's more or less, there are some implicitness rules, and it's very organized, and you keep this strictness even to this situation. And maybe the reason is that as you have a lot of people, if it's not well organized, if someone in the middle walking around, it creates a mess, right? So they see the importance of this order, the rules, and this is the image of the rush time. A lot of people leaving from work, most of them wearing suits, almost of them the same color, so you cannot see like a yellow, pink, or something this. So this is how I understand the holodozin of Japan nowadays. Okay. I decided to bring here some values of the culture, or what the Japanese values in terms of society. One is the modesty. Like again, it's connected to these traits of the inner directed. So like for instance, when you are in a group, in Japanese group, it's not well viewed when someone is better than all others. So they try to keep the modesty, keep this idea of group, avoid these people that are very, let's say, good in something, and also the opposite. In general, Japanese are very group-oriented. Something that can explain this idea could be the geographic and the natural disaster of Japan. Due to the lot of natural disaster, in this kind of situation, they need to work in group. You cannot have someone very egoistic or thinking only in him. So the idea of the group, I think it was shaped by the geographic and natural disaster condition. And the idea of seniority, it's mainly come from the Confucianism, the idea to hierarchy, to respect the older ones. And also the Japanese have in general this risk-averse condition. So could be related to this disaster and geography as well, but By working with, for some years, I worked in a company that the Japanese group bought everything, and there was some Japanese owner, and they used to go in the very long detail to avoid the risk of the product. Or in Japan, they have a lot of training to avoid to prepare the people to some earthquake or somewhere else. They have a lot of plans to reduce the risk as much as possible. So this mentality is something strong. Okay.
Marcos, we have two questions, but one of them I think is related to this moment of Weber Takaki, our friend. And he said, do you think that as a Brazilian Japanese and an outsider in both Japan and Brazil help you build up or strengthen your constitutional identity? Or do you feel it is the opposite?
Sorry again, if I feel I'm an outsider in Brazil and Japan?
Yeah. If he's asking for the Brazilian Japanese and an outsider in both Japan and Brazil. You feel you are not Japanese, but you are not a Brazilian. And if this help you build up or strengthen your consciential identity, or do you feel it is the opposite?
Okay, good question, Weber. In my experience, this concept of being outsider, even in Brazil and also in Japan, I think it's helped me. I never saw this as something negative because, for instance, I remember that during the university or during the mastery or during the professional work here, the idea to be Japanese, to have this Japanese genetic helped me to some people or some clients or some customer create more confidence. I think there's this, in Brazil, there's this idea of the Japanese people it's reliable. You can confidence, right? You can trust in Japanese. So I think this helped a lot to open some doors. And the opposite way in Japan, in Japanese groups, I used to feel more free to express myself. Like in my family, for instance, I tried always to break this the idea. The Japanese normally tend to be more cold or without touching each other or hugging, and I more or less used this idea. Okay, I was born in Brazil, like my mother, and I was trying to create more connection with her, and with the excuse that I was born in Brazil, something like this. But so what I can say that I used this outsider approach in a positive way, and for me was something good. I don't know what this connection is with the knowledge from conscientiology, but
it's because, for example, you can connect to your paraprocedence, to your intermissivit course, your real identity, that is your physical nature, not being. I imagine you have a lot of lives, or at least one life in Japan, and this life in Brazil, but not. You have strong traits and weak traits from each culture, I imagine, but you can connect another. You are not your nationality or your.
Exactly. This is the point, Virginia. In some point of my life, I saw that I am the nationality is not something that represents me. I was born in Brazil. I have this connection with Japan, but this is not exactly what represents me. I have my hollow history. I have my seriality, and then I think the study of conscientiology, the idea of permissive course, helped me a lot to enforce what I had in terms of belief or experience.
Lily was telling us that maybe you feel less restricted as a consciousness, or because the Holothocene, Brazilian Holothocene is more open and Japanese more about the repression. Maybe you are you can express emotions, but I guess. But
When I'm compare my personality to my Brazilian friends, I can see clearly that I'm more inner directed. But when I compare myself to my family or Japanese groups, I saw that I'm more emotional, let's say, or more out-directed, let's say. So, and for instance, my brother, I have one brother that lives in Japan that he used to say that I am the last Japanese in the family, something like this. But
interesting.
Interesting.
Okay, so you have other slides. We have another question, but I think you are going to talk in the next slide, so then you can complement. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I will bring here some aspect of the Japanese culture, some specific aspect that represent a bit how the Japanese think. So here we have omotenashi, wa, hierarchy and bowing, shokunin, and I will show one by one here. So I don't know if you ever heard about this, but it's omotenashi is a definition that describes the Japanese hospitality culture at its finest. So the word omotenashi, omote means public face, the front, and the nashi means nothing. So it's something like without mask, without something. It's very transparent, and the idea of the omotenashi is to create the hospitality in a very sincere and real way. Here, it's a service that comes from the bottom of the heart, honest, no hiding, no pretending. And this concept, it's all about offering the best service without expectation of reward. The idea is to go, it's to show something more than a commercial view, then you have the interest. And here, that explain why in Japan the culture of tipping is not the norm. So when you have the tipping, like when you go to a restaurant, you have a good service, you go some tip. It's something that it's not well. It's not prohibited, but it's not well viewing in Japan. And the main idea of the omotenashi is to anticipate the needs of your guests. So if someone of you decide to go to Japan for a tourist, for instance, you see how different is the Japanese service or hospitality. And this is something that is interesting, that they try to anticipate as much as possible. I will show one example. It's also related to service and also to respect to the client. I remember to go to a ryokan. It's a traditional hotel in Japan, and the girl from the hotel explained everything in the reception, and then I get into the lift, the elevator, but the girls waited out of the elevator, and I say, no, you can come together, because she said that it was you wanted to show the room, everything, explain everything. But then I get in the elevator, the lift, and she pressed the button, closed the door, and then I went up to the third floor. And when I opened the door of the third floor of the elevator, the girl was there in front of me, waiting in the very strict position, and say, okay, come over here. So And this type of going more than expected. This is a small example, but like in the train, like when you go to a train, there are some train that there are some people selling, some employees selling products, and when they get inside your part of the train, they used to do this ball, and also to leave, they look again to everyone and do this movement. It's so small things that show this idea of omotenashi. And if you go to Japan, it's interesting to notice this experience of the Japanese service. And okay, another concept, another aspect of the culture is the idea of wa. Wa, the translation of wa in English is harmony, but something maybe more deep. But the harmony is the way how we can represent. And the idea of wa, it's not only harmony but also peace. It implies a peaceful unity of conformity within a social group in which members prefer the continuation of a harmony community over their personal interest. So it's a core value that drives Japanese people. So this concept of wa make difficult to the Japanese people say no, right? So this concept also affected this idea of to be indirect, to not use more implicit things, not say directly. And this concept, it's applied on many areas, like we have wa-shi, the Japanese paper, waka, Japanese poem, wafuku, Japanese cloth, washitsu, Japanese styles of room, wafu, Japanese style in general, washoku, shoku means food, so a traditional Japanese dish. And the idea to the wa is to apply the concept of harmony in everything, in a lot of different aspects, different area. For instance, about washoku, so is the concept of wa applied on food, on Japanese food. And this type of Japanese food was designated as a heritage of UNESCO in 2013. So just to briefly comment, it's a type of food that you choose the ingredient from the season. You do not force the nature to produce something out of the season. The idea is to create a more sustainable food, more balanced in terms of the necessity of the healthy. The flavors are not very intense, are more harmony, or the combination of flavors need to be also respect the harmony of your tongue. So this type of food, it's the application of the concept of wa in the food. And another interesting aspect is the idea of hierarchy and bowing. Bowing is this, and in Japanese they call ojigi. So this is one thing inside the hierarchy system in Japan, and there are some rules. The angle that you bow, like 15, called eshaku, is something like just to greeting for a friend, for instance, or to leave a restaurant. When you are a client, you do this. Keirei is something a bit more 30 degrees, like here in the first picture you have a guy doing more or less 30 degrees, and the older one, the higher hierarchy, probably doing more or less 15 degrees. So it's a way to show or to represent or to respect the hierarchy. And this also applied in more extreme situation, like here there's a group of athletes that they are apologizing because they slept with a prostitute in Asian Games. So they went to this press conference and they do the ojigi with almost 90 degrees, like this picture. And the same thing here, we have the CEOs, executives of C Group of the Fukushima power plant after the nuclear disaster, they went to the press conference to apologize to the society. And also there's this, let's say, the more strong ojigi, that is, you need to knee in the floor and say sorry when you do something very, very bad. In this case, the same group of directors went to the peoples that were living there around the power plant to apologize to this event. And also, still about hierarchy, there is in Japan there is this keigo. Keigo, it's a way to speak. It's a type of language. It's still Japanese, but a much more formal than you need to do depending of the level of hierarchy. It could be applied in your house to talk to your parents, or in a school to talk to someone 1 year older than you, or in companies it's very, very strong to talk to your boss or to talk to someone that is older than you or have more experience than you. So this is something very implicit in the Japanese society. Another concept is idea of shokunin. Shokunin could be translated by craftsman, artisan, but the concept go a bit deeper, let's say. So we can understand as a mastery of one profession, one that is devoted to his or her craft. And the idea of shokunin is not to only learn the technical skills, but go so deep to understand the attitude of this profession, the impact of this social impact and social consciousness of this profession. It's tend to go to the perfectionism. One documentary that represented very well this is this documentary, Jiro Dreams of Sushi. That is, Jiro is this old man here in the middle. He is a sushi man for more than 70 years, and show how he still focus on to achieve the perfection of the sushi and so on. And it's very interesting. And Japan have a lot of shokunin. Not only for sushi, they have shokunin to one that make knife, shokunin to make the cable of the knife, on to shokunin for people that do special something very specific. It's a lot, and it's very well known in Japan. In Japanese channel, there's one channel called NHK, and they have a lot of documentaries showing some cases of shokunin around the countries. In woodworker, it's also well known. There are more two aspects here. That is the gambatte and shoganai. There are two expressions that represent a bit how Japanese think and behave. So gambatte, it's a way to say good luck or do your best. Like if I have I have a test that I need to do, and normally my mom used to say, gambatte, do your best. But sometimes this culture go a little bit too far, like go to the limit, something like this. In companies, there are some cases of this. And there are this Shogunite culture, is the idea of accept the things that can't be helped or keep moving forward, don't complain. It's to accept and keep doing. It's not to accept to stop the thing, but keep accept and keep moving forward. This is the idea. So if something go bad, say, oh, shogunai, let's keep doing. Oh, shogunai. So two expressions very common in Japan. So I will show here some issues, social issues in Japan, that they are more recent social issues. Japan have a very high suicide rates. Japan and Korea, they have a suicide rate very high in not only adults, also in youngs. And this issue is related to mental health. The case of depression, it's very high. School bullying and Futoko phenomenon. Bullying is something that Japan started to debate, and they also started to create some novels, some also movies regarding bullying to really start to talk about this, but it's something strong comparison to Western culture. Futoko phenomenon, due to this bullying, there are a lot of students that are refusing to go to school. Hikikomori, it's a phenomenon, social phenomenon that people stay in the room, stay in your house, your room without leaving for many years. So they talk to no one, and it's a case of deep depression. And kadokushi, it's something, the loneliness, as the Japanese in general tend to be more inner directed, and also due to other reasons, but they have this phenomenon of lonely death. So people that they don't have more connection with their family or friends, they live alone, and then they deaf, and then the people or the neighbors just know this after some months. So it's a phenomenon quite common in Japan, unfortunately.
Perfect. Marcos, we have about 10 minutes to finish. Maybe we can give a more little minutes.
Okay.
And we have then a question from Malu. Okay, so after you finish the social issues, I can...
Okay, we are close to almost finishing. Okay. So another issue, social issue related to work. We have karoshi, that is death by overwork. It's really death by working too much. They have a heart attack and this kind of disease. Burakuchijo it's a concept of blacklist company. There are a lot of companies that really exploit the employees. So like shortly, when I told my brother that a Japanese company bought the company that I was working, he said, he asked me, what's the name of company? I will check in the blacklist if it's there or not. Workaholism is very strong, and nomikai. Nomikai is the drink after work, but not just drink like colleagues, friends, but it's a continuation of the work in a bar. The boss go there, the employees go there, they have this society, they talk about work, they keep the hierarchy, so it's a continuation of the work in a bar, drinking. And the last social issue related to, I don't know if it's exactly social issue, we can't call this, but it's the problem of communication. So ambiguity as a way to balance or not create discomfort, the value of silence, read air, so kukyu or yonu, it means there are some situations that the people, Japanese people don't explain very well, but you need to read to take what is implicit and then interpret the information. The concept of implicitness and not make someone upset. This affects the communication. And almost finishing, we have the Japanese pop culture that is more or less after the Second World War, spread around the world. We have the games, anime, food, some movies, and here we have the image of the former Prime Minister of Japan, wearing the clothes on Tokyo to promote the Olympic Games in Tokyo, in Japan. Holocaust of Nations. And this, if you see, in my interpretation, Japan is in a reconciliation phase with countries from East and Southwest Asia. So if we see the countries that Japan was invading of during the expansion area are the list of very similar to the list of countries that immigrate to Japan. So Korea, Philippines, China, Vietnam, Indonesia, and Thailand. So in my hypothesis is that Japan is in the phase of conciliation with all these countries that have conflict during the last 200 years. And to finish, the challenge for the intermissivists in Japan, or in Japan or connected to Japanese culture. I think the main challenge are to break some traditions, right? To overpass the repression that is very long in Japanese society. It's related to this is also related to the idea of claritask. So this concept of of harmony, could not be good to the claritask. Sometimes you need to be very directed and clarify the things. And another thing is the parapsychism. I remember to ask to Valdo what he know about the parapsychism in Japan, if someone more expressive. And he said, don't remember, nothing special about parapsychism in Japan. So I think this is one point that need to be, maybe, I don't know, more explicit parapsychism is required to people that connect to Japanese culture. So that's it. Here I put some information that I recommend. There are a lot of information about Japanese culture in many languages, but there are some that I think are interesting. There are a few books, movies, documentaries, and also I recommended 2 YouTube channels that there are these 2 Japanese guys shows about some issues about Japan and also some tradition and culture. And it's very interesting because they do this in English, and they try to show a view from someone inside the culture. どうもありがとうございました。Thank you very much. And that's it.
Arigato. Thank you very much. We have a few minutes, so
Can I just say
Yeah.
little something? It was very interesting. We were discussing this week, Marcos and I, because you know, the whole energy, everything, you know, around this presentation. This week, I found some more news about Japan and things that are changing, starting
Yeah.
to change in Japan, right? And I sent to him as well, you know, this movement of the young people, right? Youngsters that maybe those that didn't want to go to school, I don't know, but they want a lot of changes from clothes and the way they cut their hairs, and you know, there's a movement for change, I think. And on the other side, in concerning houses, this idea of Zen and you know, minimalism that comes from the East, and particularly from Japan, right, is now influencing many countries as far as housing is concerned. This concept of the tiny house, that you know, that is very interesting, also comes from Japan. But you know, it's interesting how the Japanese affect the whole world, you know, with their creations, inventions, creativity, and all that. And at the same time, hopefully, there are some influences that will start, you know, helping change all this traditionalism. Yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree totally. Japan is under transformation, and about these social issues, mainly it's some topics that Japanese people started to talk about this. The bullying, for instance, is something very old. I think that it's very problematic, and now they try to talk about this about the haircut and this to be very formal, organized. This is something that slowly I can see that it's changing. So let's see for the next years.
Okay, perfect. Just quickly here, Malu is telling us that she will live 2 months in Japan, and there are some behaviors that you recommend to us to observe in order to know more about that Oriental and insular culture. I think you present, but maybe if you can give some advice.
Yeah, I would focus, considering the hypothesis that we are intermissivists, I would focus on to be better communication, be direct, and to focus on what is too much wa, right? We tend to keep the wa, the harmony. It's good for one side, but for other, and sometimes when you need to go in a clarity task, something more strict, it can create a problem for you. And in my experience, it's something that I'm working on. And the idea of have something implicit or not well clear, it's for evolution, I think is not good.
Okay. Last question here from Andre Pedretti. In your experience, the spread and practice of WA is more often expressed as detail or perfectionism? Perfection?
I don't know which one is more wa. This is talk about wa, the concept of
Well,
harmony, but I think it's wa is more expressed. But we cannot generalize it, but wa you can. It's applied on many different aspects. The social relationship, the food, the house, the clothes. So, but I cannot assure that it's more expressive. And details is something I would say more strong than perfection. Detail is if you go to Japan, if you visit some place, company, you see how details, how they think in each details.
okay, perfect. Well, we are at the end. Would you like to finish with some comments, something, Lily? Would you like to say something? Any comment?
I would just like to add. I had some. Marcos knows I had some Japanese bosses. Right, I worked for the Japanese in London, and so I didn't work just for the English, but the company was owned by the Japanese, and there are certain things about the culture that everyone, like, if you're going there to live there for a while, it's good that you learn a little bit more about the culture before you go, because you need to
Yeah.
know when to speak, what to say, how to greet. All these things are things that one needs to learn, because otherwise the differences are so huge that maybe communication will suffer from that. There's things that are permitted or allowed, and there's things that are not, and things like that. So you need to learn a little bit maybe about this, right? But Marcos,
Great.
he told, and these slides will be available for everyone, right? Because there's a lot of it that is mentioned on these slides, and that you told us about the culture, that are really important for people to interject a little bit, to understand the culture a little bit.
Great. I agree totally, absolutely with you, Lily. It's sometimes we tend to see the other culture by judging, but many times it's important to understand the context. Where does it come from? Why they think in this way? To really try how this way of thinking, a way of behavior started, and then you understand and the approach for some.
And also because
Distance or
there's
tourist.
always things that are positive, and that we can learn from the culture, right? Because
Exactly.
there's all the things that are positive in every culture we want to learn, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, when you visit a country, it's not the first time. Sometimes if you go there, it's because you have some links from the past. But Marcos, my last question,
Yes.
a little difficult, but what do you think? Why do you think you was born in a Japanese family? What is the why? What is the relation with your pro-exes?
I don't have the answer, but my feeling is that I'm in a process to leave this culture that I was very immersed in this culture in the past. This is a feeling that I have, and to born here in a Japanese family and in Brazil, in my hypothesis is that I'm in a transition. I may still have to solve many things in my past related to this culture, but it's a step to leave this culture, not leave, but to recycle things that it's old for me. So I think that I'm in this process. I'm not back into Japanese. I'm in the process to leave, and this is the importance and this transition that I feel that I am right now.
And that's the kind, sometimes we still have to do some reconciliations,
Yes,
recomposition, and so that we can live more comfortably.
Yeah.
I suppose. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, very interesting topic. Congrats, because it was very rich, a lot of information. I will watch again to see, to understand more, because it was really, really very, very good presentation. So thank you very much for being here today. Lily,
Yeah,
you too.
definitely, thank you. It was really great. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you very
It's a
much.
pity we don't have time to debate, but
Yeah.
we can have the second chapters.
Yeah, why not? And thank you everyone. Thank you too. Thank you, Isaac, and thank you everyone that participate. Was a pleasure for me to talk about this topic, and I hope you have enjoyed.
Okay, so thank you everyone, and see you in the next
Bye.
culture.
See you.
See you.
Bye.
Bye bye.